Everyone thinks they're lazy. That's the story. The unfinished goals, the gym membership collecting dust, the language app opened once, then forgotten, the notebook filled with plans that never became action. It feels like a motivation problem. It feels like a discipline problem. It feels like a personality flaw. But here's the uncomfortable truth. It's not laziness. It's friction. And by the end of this video, a single psychological shift will completely change how habits are built. Not through willpower, not through hype, not through punishment, but through design. Because the people who seem disciplined aren't stronger. They've just removed the resistance. And once that resistance disappears, habits stop feeling hard. They start feeling automatic. Most habit advice sounds heroic. Wake up at 5 a.m., go all in, push through the pain, outwork everyone. That works for about 3 days. Then the brain rebels. Why? Because the brain does not care about goals. The brain cares about efficiency. It is wired to conserve energy. It constantly asks one question: is this worth the effort? If the answer feels uncertain, it resists. This is where most people lose. They try to overpower biology with motivation, but motivation is emotional fuel, and emotional fuel runs out. The real psychology trick is something far less dramatic. It's called reducing activation energy. Activation energy is a concept borrowed from chemistry. It describes the minimum energy required to start a reaction. Habits work the same way. Every behavior has a starting cost. The higher the cost, the less likely it begins. And here's the key. Lazy people don't fail because they lack ambition. They fail because their activation energy is too high. Think about it. Work out for an hour. Sounds productive. But mentally, it translates to change clothes, drive to the gym, warm up, lift, shower, drive back. That's not one action. That's friction stacked on friction. Now compare that to do one push-up, almost no resistance. The difference is not discipline. The difference is psychological weight. And the brain always chooses the lighter option. This leads to the psychology trick that changes everything. Make the habit so small it feels almost stupid, not impressive, not intense, almost laughably easy. Because the goal is not intensity. The goal is consistency. Most people aim for transformation. Successful people aim for repetition. Repetition builds identity. Identity sustains behavior. Here's how this works neurologically. When a behavior is completed, even a small one, the brain releases dopamine. Not because the task was big, but because it was completed. Completion creates reward. Reward creates reinforcement. Reinforcement creates repetition. And repetition builds habit loops. The problem is not laziness. The problem is failing too big too early. When goals are large, failure feels heavy. When failure feels heavy, avoidance increases. When avoidance increases, identity shifts. I'm inconsistent. I never stick to things. And that belief becomes self-fulfilling. But small wins interrupt that cycle. One page read, one push-up, one sentence written. Each tiny completion says something different. I follow through. And identity begins to shift. Here's the second part of the trick. Lower the starting ritual. Most habits don't fail during execution. They fail at the beginning. The hardest part of a workout is not the workout. It's putting on the shoes. The hardest part of writing is not writing. It's opening the document. The hardest part of studying is not studying. It's sitting down. The brain resists transitions. So instead of focusing on the habit, focus on the entry point. If the goal is to read every night, don't commit to 20 pages. Commit to opening the book. If the goal is to work out, don't commit to a full session. Commit to stepping into workout clothes. This is called habit anchoring. Attach the habit to something automatic. After brushing teeth, open the book. After morning coffee, write one sentence. After work, put on gym shoes. The brain loves patterns. Once the pattern locks in, effort decreases. There's another psychological lever most people ignore. Environment beats willpower. Willpower is fragile, environment is powerful. If junk food is visible, it will be eaten. If the phone is within reach, it will be checked. If the guitar is hidden in a closet, it will not be played. The brain takes the path of least resistance, so make good habits obvious, make bad habits invisible, leave the book on the pillow, put the water bottle on the desk, charge the phone in another room. This isn't weakness, this is strategic laziness. Design the environment so that the easy choice becomes the right choice. Now here's where most people sabotage themselves. They rely on emotion. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. But feelings are weather. They change daily. Systems are climate. They remain steady. The psychology trick that makes habits stick is not about intensity. It's about inevitability. If the habit requires motivation, it will collapse. If the habit requires minimal effort, it survives low-energy days. And low-energy days are the test. Anyone can work when motivated. The real habit forms when energy is low, but action still happens. That's why tiny habits win. Because they survive bad days. Let's talk about identity. This is where habits become permanent. Most people say, "I'm trying to work out." That language keeps behavior temporary. Instead, the shift is, "I'm becoming someone who doesn't miss." Even if the action is small, especially if it's small. Because identity is built through votes. Each completed habit is a vote for the person becoming. Miss once, no problem. Miss twice, pattern forming. Consistency builds evidence. Evidence builds belief. Belief sustains behavior. Here's something counterintuitive. Doing less often leads to doing more. When the brain knows it only needs to do one push-up, it often does 5. When it knows it only needs to write one sentence, it often writes a paragraph. But this only works if the minimum is honored. If the rule is at least 1, then 1 is success. 0 is the only failure. That removes guilt, and guilt is a silent habit killer. When people miss a day, they feel behind. When they feel behind, they avoid restarting. When they avoid restarting, momentum dies. The solution? Never miss twice. One small action restores identity. Even 1 minute counts. Now let's address the word lazy. Laziness is usually misdiagnosed fatigue, decision fatigue, emotional fatigue, overwhelm. The modern brain is overstimulated, constant notifications, endless scrolling, infinite comparison. The mind is exhausted before the day begins. So, of course, it avoids effort. This isn't a character flaw, it's cognitive overload. Small habits reduce mental strain. They feel manageable, and manageable feels safe. The brain moves toward safety. There's also something called the Zeigarnik effect. Unfinished tasks occupy mental space, but started tasks create momentum. When something begins, the brain wants closure. That's why starting is more powerful than planning. Start messy, start small, start badly. Just start. Because starting breaks inertia, and inertia is the real enemy. Let's make this practical. Instead of wake up early every day, try sit up in bed immediately when the alarm rings. Instead of journal for 20 minutes, try write one honest sentence. Instead of learn a new language, try study one word. The habit is not the big act, the habit is the ritual. Ritual creates identity. Identity creates expansion. Expansion happens naturally once friction is low. Now here's the deeper psychological layer. Humans crave progress, but progress must feel visible. If results are far away, motivation fades. So create immediate evidence. Use streak trackers. Mark an X on a calendar. Use a habit app. Visual proof strengthens reward pathways. Each check mark becomes reinforcement, and reinforcement builds attachment. The habit stops feeling optional. It starts feeling part of the day, like brushing teeth, not debated, just done. But here's the twist. The goal is not to become hyper-productive. The goal is to become consistent. Consistency compounds. Tiny daily improvements, stacked over months, transform identity quietly. The person who reads 1 page per day reads 365 pages per year. The person who does 5 push-ups daily does 1,825 per year. The math is boring. The result is not. Small habits create massive delayed impact, but only if they survive. And they survive when friction is low. Now imagine this, a habit so small it cannot fail. 1 push-up, 1 sentence, 1 minute. No hype, no dramatic speeches, just quiet repetition. After 30 days, the identity shifts. After 90 days, the routine feels natural. After a year, the transformation looks dramatic. But the effort never felt overwhelming. That is the psychology trick. Reduce activation energy, lower friction, attach habits to identity, design the environment, protect consistency over intensity. So if habits have never stuck before, it wasn't laziness. It was design. Lower the barrier, shrink the habit, protect the streak, and watch what happens over the next 30 days. Because the real transformation isn't dramatic. It's quiet, it's subtle, it's almost invisible. Until one day, the person in the mirror looks disciplined, not because of motivation, not because of personality, but because friction was removed. And once friction disappears, consistency feels effortless. And that is the psychology trick that makes habits stick. Even if laziness used to win, even if motivation disappears, even if discipline feels out of reach, make it small, make it easy, make it repeatable, and let identity do the rest. If this perspective shifted something, consider subscribing to the Old Soul's Guide, because the deepest transformations don't start with force. They start with understanding, and understanding changes everything.